Spring is a very complex framework, and for someone just starting out, it can be intimidating. Spring Boot, however, introduced a set of default configurations and workflows that makes the platform much more user-friendly. This is the first video in a series about Spring Boot development in Kotlin. In this episode, we are going to create our first project, write a REST controller, and briefly discuss hot swapping, which is an important tool that will significantly improve your developing experience. We will use IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition as an IDE that you can download and use for free. If you enjoyed the content and you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe. It makes a big difference. Thanks. We're going to start by searching for Spring Initializer. It's this first one, start.spring.io. So this is a web tool where we select a bunch of dependencies and it generates a starter project for us. For the build system, we're gonna use Gradle. You can use Maven if you like. I like Gradle better. It's a newer system, faster, it has a nicer syntax. Of course, for language, we're gonna select Kotlin. Here, the latest stable version of Spring Boot. The later versions are snapshots, so are not final releases. We need to provide a group here, or we can leave it as com example, and a name here. Let's just call it first boot. Yeah, Java 11 is fine. And for dependencies, we are going to add web. This is the dependency that allows us to write web applications and also RESTful APIs. And it uses Apache Tomcat as a server. So we're going to select this one. And also developer tools. Spring Boot Dev Tools. It says provides fast application restarts, live reload, etc. It makes our experience much better. We're going to look into it later. And if we click on explore here, it shows us the files in the project that it generates. This is the build file, the Gradle configuration file, and it shows the actual dependencies. And you will see that there are these dependencies. Spring Boot starter. So we have Spring Boot starter web, Spring Boot starter test. These are some convenient dependencies from Spring Boot. So whenever you need to add a feature to your server, this is a good place to start. And if we search for Spring Boot reference, and we look in here and developing with Spring Boot, and I think in here there's a section on starters. It says starters are a set of convenient dependency descriptors that you can include in your application. It's a one-stop shop for related technology. So for example, let's say you want to add, you want to allow your server to send emails. We look in here and we see there's a Spring Boot starter mail that you can use to add a client for that, an SMTP client. Maybe you don't like that library that much, and of course you can use another one, but this is a good place to start. Okay, so now we download this archive. I'm gonna save it in here. So now we extract this archive in here, and I'm gonna use IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. This is free IDE from IntelliJ. It's the free version. They also have a subscription version that you need to purchase. I use it, I like it, but if you don't want to pay for it, just use this Community Edition. I know Visual Studio Code is very popular, but you need to install and configure some plugins to make it work with Spring Boot and Java, and IntelliJ IDEA just works out of the box. So we start this one in here. And for projects, we click on Open. and we navigate where we extracted the project and just select the directory and click open. And it's going to take a while for the project to index. Okay, the project finished indexing. Now we're going to execute it. So we're going to navigate to main Kotlin first boot application. This is the file generated by the web tool. And we have this function main, and we just click on this little triangle from here and click on run first boot application, and it will generate a run configuration for us. And it says right here, the Tomcat server started on port 8080. And it also gives us the time that it took to start. So 6 seconds, 3.5. There's nothing to see right now because we don't have any controllers. So we're going to add one controller next. We're going to create a new class in here. So just right click on the package name, new Kotlin class. And we're going to call it hello controller. Okay, and we need to annotate this controller with REST controller. This is a feature of Spring Boot called auto configuration. So what it does, it scans all the classes in our class path in our project, and it sees like which classes are annotated with controllers or other components, and then it knows that it needs to add routes for these controllers. In some other frameworks like Django, you need to define all your routes in one place, but with Autoscan we don't need to do that explicitly. The system will determine it for us, and we can have other annotations such as filters. We can have services or repositories for data, etc. We're going to look into them into future videos. So now we're just going to add endpoint in here. Let's call it hello. And we need to annotate it with get mapping. So get, this is the HTTP method that we're going to use, get. And let's just call it hello in here. And the return type will be string. And now we're just going to return hello world in here. So now if we run this, if we run the project again, and we go to localhost 8080, localhost 8080-hello, we will see that it worked as expected. Now let's look a bit into what the DevTools is doing. So the hot swapping feature. Let's say we want to change this string to something else, to, for example, to welcome. So now what we need to do is that we don't need to stop the project and then restart it, which takes, as we saw, like around 3 seconds. So we just modify the code and then rebuild our module. So we click in here, and we see here in this running console that the server identified that we changed some code, and it reloaded the code, and this took only 0.4 seconds. And you can see it's a much better experience. Now we have a small project right now, only a few packages, but for bigger projects it can take 6-7 seconds to start, maybe more. And because you need to initialize connections to databases, etc. But with hot swapping, this is much faster. It's very important that you turn it on. You're gonna have a much better experience. Next, we are going to work on this controller to get it closer to a more production version, something that you would see in real life. So our scenario is that we're going to create a controller for, let's say, accounts. So we're going to rename this one to accounts controller. And now we're going to use the annotation called request mapping in here, and with the parameter dash accounts. So now all the endpoints in this controller will begin with the dash accounts. And in this case, so this endpoint in here will be dash accounts dash hello. If we can try it out actually. So we just rebuild in here. So we go dash accounts dash hello, and we see our endpoint in here. Okay, and we're in our case we're going to have an endpoint that returns all the accounts. The result will be hard-coded for now, and a post endpoint that will create an account. So we'll add a data class called the view account that will be represented in the will be the output of our endpoint, and it will have two fields, one ID and one name, which is a string. And now this function will return an iterable of view account. And this one we need to rename it to get all. So now in here we return list of view, let's say one account, ID equals 1, name equals first. So now if we rebuild this one, and we go to accounts, we'll see this object that we just created. This is where Kotlin comes in handy, because in Java we would need to create a class with all these boilerplate methods like get ID, set ID, get name, set name. A lot of boilerplate code that is reduced with these data classes in Kotlin. And now we're also going to create a post mapping on the same path, but it will be a different HTTP method. And let's call the endpoint create view account. And now what we also need to create another data class for create, which will be the input that the server is expecting. So if we create a data class here called create account, and this one only has the name. And so this function will take as an argument the create account a data class. So it'll be, let's call it request of type create account. And we need to use the annotation request body. Let's see what is the problem. And we return, we don't need val in there. We need to return a view account. We're just going to give it a fake ID, let's say 2. And name equals request .name. And we rebuild it. And we need to test it with Postman or an HTTP client. So in here, we will do accounts, and it will be a post, and we go to body. Let's add the name in here. Second account. And yeah, we need to pick raw and JSON and post. So we hit send, and we see here second account. That's it for today. We will continue the series in future videos. I will link the source code in the video description below. See you next time.